in the intro. Well, welcome back to the Yahowah vlog. I understand some of you who were listening to the last program reacted fairly strongly when I said, I'm fairly convinced that Adam was Dowd. Dowd was Adam. And I turned to this not just because of what it said here, where he spoke of, God, provide me the illumination so that I can be observant and therefore avoid being inactive and dying. And realize that that's an indicative of what went wrong in Eden with the first man made in God's image. And I made that deduction from a number of things. One is that Dowd is called the firstborn of Yahowah, and yet Yahowah has many sons and daughters that are part of the covenant long before the life of Dowd as the shepherd boy would have been conceived. So it is unlikely that he would have called him that and been so strong about it, where he would say, God said on numerous occasions that he is my son, I am his father. The one person that he literally conceived and brought to life as a son of his would have been Adam. God conceived from the very fundamental product of the creation of the earth, and breathed into him. He personally breathed into him his soul and his neshama, his consciousness and conscience. And so Dowd fits the description of firstborn son of God. The second reason I have said it is that should be apparent, it is to me, that there is no way that God could have made the statement that he chose Dowd when all he would have known is his first 8 years, and even those at a distance when he was shepherding sheep in Bethlehem, where there is no reference whatsoever to God introducing himself or them having a conversation, God teaching him anything prior to the time that they would meet under the auspices of Shamuel anointing him and Yahweh's instructions. And so it isn't possible for God to say, I know him. Now, if you want to say, well, God can see the future, so he knew what he was going to turn out to be. Well, if he saw the immediate future, he wouldn't have chosen him because it didn't turn out very good. And second of all, the moment God turns to the future to evaluate a relationship based upon what it's going to be, as opposed to enjoying it develop, then he destroys the whole purpose of it. So that's not a good answer. Therefore, it is logical to deduce that Dowd's soul was placed in others throughout time, and that along the way, God got to know him and developed an affinity for him. And this is something we need to accept, because God can place a soul in anyone at any time, and he is absolutely entitled to play favorites, particularly on important things. If he wants something done and there's really no one that is paying attention to him or responding to him, which is most of human history, he needs to intervene, but doesn't want to contravene free will or make a big scene. Then God's only way of doing it is to work through people, and the best thing to do is insert somebody that he's comfortable working with, that he's can trust, that he's done things with in the past, and who have proven reliable, observant, responsive, thoughtful, and indeed trustworthy. So this is something that if we're going to follow along in God's story, we need to get comfortable with. A great example was Enoch. Another example is Elia. Clearly, Dowd has more than one life, and so does the individual in the role that I am fulfilling for Yahowah. Turns out far more than what I had previously anticipated. But that is God's style, and it's ingenious for him. He can keep his story on track and do so very quietly and methodically and consistently and deliberately, comfortably, and enjoyably for him. So this is something that I've come to appreciate the more that we have studied his testimony. And when you consider that, initially, Yahowah and Dowd, particularly as they were coming to know the life around them and various animals, they developed a fairly good relationship. And then Adam went through a moment, certainly a prolonged time, where he was no longer observant, no longer particularly responsive. He wasn't particularly thoughtful and certainly not trustworthy. And this actually is invocative of what happened with Dowd. And when you consider Adam's response to God after the episode with the tree of knowledge, he passed the buck. He said, "Hey, the woman, she was the one. The woman you gave me, she was the one that handed it to me, so I ate, And had you not given me that woman, it wouldn't have happened." He's passing the buck. If you read Dowd's 51st Psalm, it sounds just like Adam's response to God, even worse. And so anyway, I read the text and you think about, okay, what would have happened and why these terms, why firstborn son was used, why the implications that we've read in the 13th Mizmowr, and the whole purpose of chokmah and bien, intelligence and understanding, is to go from yada and dayat to knowing where the pieces of this puzzle, what they look like, to fitting them together properly. So it is my deduction that indeed Adam is Dowd. Wasn't Dowd's only life prior to being chosen as a shepherd boy, by the way, either. And this would make Dowd 6,000 years old. And it explains a lot of the timeline, and I hope to go through this at one point, as to why Enoch was allowed to stay around for a particular time, why God waited to take him, because he would make it through the conclusion of Dowd's life. Dowd at the end of his life has a tendency to swirl down a bit, and that's when God provided Chinook, and that's probably when Enoch earned God's favor, when he started looking after Dowd. And that would be really the only way at that point for Chinook to earn God's favor, because there was nobody else with whom up to that point Yahowah had a relationship with other than Dowd. So it would be by looking after him. And I checked the timeline. Indeed, Chinook would stay here on earth some 50 years past Dowd's life. In fact, long enough that he and his wife, and he evidently liked his wife a lot, because he Chinook negotiated with Yahowah to say, all right, I'll do this redeployment thing. You need a fixer. You need somebody to go in and resolve issues. Obviously, I was decent about it with Dowd long ago. Sure, I'll do it, but she comes with me. Good women are sometimes hard to find. You find a really good one, you want to have them accompany you. So I have a monogamous marriage with lots of different applications of the same woman. Kind of fun. So I was able to deduce other points, other people that have been represented by both the soul that is within me and the one that's within Dowd, and also Leah as my wife. going through time, and I'm afraid that I might scare some people to death if I go through and tell you who the others are at this point. So we'll hold off on that. But I've shared here with our team who I think I have roles I have played, Leah has played, and that Dowd has played, so that Yahowah had a chance to get to know him. Anyway, he continues in this particular Mizmowr. We're considering the 13th. And he says, you and I are in agreement that it is essential you consider answering me, Yahowah. Interesting proclamation. And for him to say this, several things have to be true. One is that he knows now that he is going to be doing something with Yahowah that normally would require a response. And in the study of the Moed Mikre, these invitations to meet with God, it is our responsibility to respond to God and to meet with him on these dates. And Dowd now, by fulfilling the first three and knowing he's going to do so, is just saying, okay, well, the corollary also applies. Since I'm fulfilling them, you have a responsibility, Yahowah, to answer me. And so you and I are in agreement that it is essential that you consider answering me, Yahowah. My God, illuminate my eyes, negating the possibility that I become inactive and die. Now, this can be read two ways. One is he recognizes that he was indeed Adam, and that he became lethargic, and God's promise to them was that if you ignore his advice, you will in fact die, particularly if you're not observant, paying attention to his instructions. And it also would mean that as Dowd volunteered to fulfill Pesach as the lamb and his body was sacrificed, he didn't want his soul also to be extinguished at that time. So he wanted to make certain that he continued to be active all the way through Chag Matzah, so that in fact we need the Rich, we need the cover for the books, please. We're going to put the cover on the books to keep them from rain and books is not a good thing. So here we go. We're going to throw the cover on the bookshelf here. As for me, I think I'm going to survive. It's not going to be long enough. I'm going to survive, and I'm drip dry, so that's not a issue, and it's not a particularly cold rain. So what he's saying is that so long as he is thoroughly observant, paying attention to what's going on, remains active through the process, that he will not die as he fulfills Pesach, that he will continue to live through Matzah and into Bakurim. This is Mizmowr, Psalm 13:3. So it is by knowing that we live. It is through ignorance that we become susceptible to the plague of death and die. To benefit from the covenant, we must actively engage in it based upon the conditions Yahowah has illuminated. The slanderous and disingenuous testimony of Shaul Paul, who God calls the plague of death, as presented in his Christian New Testament. Paul wrote the first 14 books of the New Testament, and he inspired the next 3 or 4, including the book of Acts, Mark, and Luke, which became the basis also of Matthew. And the New Testament prevails by robbing Dowd and his people of their dignity. In its place, he gave rise to the most anti-Semitic institution the world would ever know. Christianity demonizes and dehumanizes Jews, accusing them of killing the Christian God. Pretty preposterous concept, isn't it? You killed Jesus. Okay, well, if Jesus is God, how did men kill him? Oh, well, they don't have a good answer for that. In response, Akiba fought one lie with another, and he created Judaism, which did as much harm as the religion it was intended to refute, particularly to Jews. So this continues. Otherwise, pen, lest the one who is in opposition to me will say, I have prevailed over him. My adversaries are pleased, rejoicing, and exulting in their circular reasoning. as I am dislodged and removed, toppled from my righteous and rightful position. Mizmowr lyrics to sing Psalm 13:4. Yeah, the big issue with Christianity and indeed with Judaism is that they actually celebrate prevailing over Dowd. Maybe they don't know they're prevailing over Dowd, but they should. That's what they have done. They have robbed Dowd of his title, Son of God, robbed Dowd of his title, Chosen One. They robbed Dowd of his title, Messiah. They robbed Dowd of his title, King. They robbed Dowd of his role returning with Yahowah. As king forevermore. They have robbed Dowd of his role as savior. They even robbed Dowd of the fact that he was the one who was crucified. He's the one who took our guilt into Sheol, into hell. So Christianity is essentially thievery of Dowd. It is character assassination that has created the religion, and they gloat over their their mythical replacement, their caricature, and pretend that they have somehow prevailed over what they call the Old Testament and its law. Nothing could be farther from the truth. But as much as God's people, Jews, have convoluted the story and have failed to recognize what Dowd has achieved, they've aided and abetted their adversaries, Yahweh's adversary and Dowd's. So my adversaries are pleased. Yeah, of course. The way that Jews responded to Dowd's fulfillment and all of the many prophecies regarding his fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, and the fact that Yahowah calls Dowd his son and that he refers to him multiple times as the Messiah, it's astonishing that Jews stood down and allowed that religion to grow up in their midst. It wouldn't have taken much at the time to annul it, refute it, and to discredit it, but they didn't. And so Paul and company used all manner of circular reasoning to dislodge Dowd, the Messiah and Son of God, from his rightful position. That is anything more to Christianity than robbing Dowd to create the myth of Jesus. That's it. That's the whole religion. So God provided many hundreds of prophecies pertaining to what his Ben, son, and Mashiach, Messiah, would accomplish together. Many were scribed in first person, and, well, they are abundantly clear. None of them are transferable. And yet Jews dismissed them, and Christians stole them. As a result, countless millions have been deprived of the benefits that Dowd delivered. Life, being rendered not guilty, being adopted into the covenant, being enriched, being empowered, emancipated, all of that. They deny themselves by miscasting Dowd. So the king's adversaries are religious Christians and Jews, because both sought to systematically remove him from his exalted and rightful position alongside Yahowah, doing so by either renouncing or transferring his acclaim using circular reasoning. The consequence, as noted, has been horrendous, causing Gentiles to believe it is their God-given right to denigrate Jews while negating the revelations God made through them. They have cursed themselves. Now, failing to recognize that Dowd is the Messiah, that this left Jews estranged from both father and son. They would be enslaved, segregated, subjugated, and impoverished by more people and in harsher conditions than any ethnicity in history. And yet, even throughout the Gentile-inspired genocide of the Holocaust, a remnant would survive. Many of them will come home at the right time. Psalm after psalm, prophet after prophet have told the same story, revealing the ecstasy associated with God's beloved Son opening the door to understanding and to life, and the agony of having ignorant men convolute his intent such that his children were abused rather than blessed. It is the story of man superimposing his myths over Yahweh's witness and leading countless generations astray. The Mizmowr reads, "And yet I myself have trusted and relied upon batach. I have placed my confidence in, and I have become safe and secure by your chesed, your loyal love, enduring devotion, unfailing kindness, favoritism, and mercy. My thoughts and inclinations, my leb, my heart, judgment, devotion to reason, inner nature and disposition, my character and my very basis for living. Rejoice in your Yahowah, freedom, deliverance, and salvation, your liberation and rescue from harm's way." Psalm 13:5. So Dowd initially approached Yahowah by closely examining the evidence he had provided in his Torah. Then he carefully considered the implications of God's teaching and guidance and responded appropriately. But, to be fair, he had moments of grandeur, but many, many, many others that were far less ideal. He did not have good parenting. And as a result, when afforded great power, he abused it. And Dowd actually became more embittered against Yahowah than Moshe did during the Exodus. The worst meltdown that exists really is presented in 2 Samuel as Dowd chases after Bathsheba and then connives to have her husband killed, and then lambaste God in the 51st Mizmowr. It is, the only reason it could have been retained for us is to really show us how far he had fallen. And at this point, God had no communication with Dowd. He was speaking to him through Nathan, and the last conversation with Nathan is to really show his anger at Dowd. He told a heart-wrenching story to Dowd through Nathan, and when Dowd responded, said, "Oh God, that's just awful. That man ought to die for all that he has done." And Nathan said, "You are that man." And so it would take an intervention. Dowd would need the loving support of a mother that he had not known, and the discipline, really, the modeling of being judgmental of a father. And it couldn't be just any woman or man. It would have to be a pair that were resolutely Torah observant, that knew what God said, that cared about what God said, that thought about it, that had made the connections, because they would have to use everything that they had learned over that lifetime to resolve the king's embitterness towards God. Or otherwise, it was all for naught. There would be no fulfillment of the Moed Mikre. There would be no homecoming of God. There would be no restoration of the earth. It would all devolve into nothingness, and God would just walk away and never return. So it was a lot at stake, and God had an ingenious way of resolving it. And we walked Dowd through the Mikre, all 7 of them. Spoke of which he would fulfill, which we would fulfill, which where he would return, and what the benefits would be for everyone, including him, by fulfilling the spring Moedim. And when he did so, Dowd became our Savior. Now, For the rest of us, the process is straightforward. Observation leads to knowing. Knowing, if you make the right connections, leads to understanding and comprehension. This leads to trusting Yahowah to provide deliverance, freedom, salvation, doing so through his son. Doing what he did better than anyone who has ever lived as a songwriter, although I think my wife is going to challenge him in this regard. I think that what she is able to achieve now and writing the lyrics and melodies for songs and conceiving the vocals for them and having the team and she create the graphics, I think she is reaching an entirely new level. And Dowd says, I will sing to Yahowah because he rewards men and seeks recompense. Gamal, he deals fairly with me, bountifully bestowing benefits on me like all the children he raises and weans me while requiring on my behalf restitution and accountability. Psalm 13:6. Since we have two equally valid ways to translate Gamal as rewards or recompense, and since both apply and are fair when properly attributed, I thought we should include both within the closing lyrics of the song. We should admire and appreciate Yahowah for doing both, for honoring his promise to bless his covenant family while holding those accountable who have sought to denigrate and abuse Yahowah, his covenant family, and those who serve with God. So as is our custom, here is that Mizmowr, was a short one, from beginning to end. To the enduring leader, a song of Dowd the beloved. Yahowah, for how long, especially on behalf of the restoring witness, will you allow me to be overlooked? He knew the answer, of course, because I had told him. Enduring eminence, eternal director, for what extent of time will you conceal the direct and close association of your presence with regard to me? It wasn't actually concealed, but the fact is, the words were there, but Jews and Christians never saw them. For how long, and on behalf of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony, will I set forth counsel and advice from the tree of knowledge through my soul? It was Dowd's soul who would be the source of the tree of lives, and it was the tree of knowledge that would explain how to capitalize on what Dowd's nefesh soul would do. The dissatisfaction of having been pushed away, which is what everyone, Christians, Muslims, Jews, have done. Disregarded and discarded is upon my heart and my thinking every day, as it would have to weigh heavily on him. It's one thing to make the sacrifice to fulfill Pesach by being crucified and matzah by carrying our guilt into Sheol, hell. And it's another thing to be disregarded for it, to have the religions of Christianity in particular, and then Judaism, actually steal from Dowd what he had achieved. Can you imagine making a sacrifice of that extent, only to have your own people not only rob you of it, but replace you with a false Messiah? Claiming the false Messiah was going to be the Savior, and that false Messiah led to the diaspora and to the renaming of the land Palestina, and to the death of thousands and millions of Jews and shuttles and holocausts and the like, when Dowd was offering salvation. So you and I are in agreement that it is essential that you consider answering me, Yahowah, my God. In the case of most of us, our role is to respond to God. That's my role. God has something he wants to communicate, something he wants done. And when we answer the call and respond to him, good things happen. Dowd was in a unique position in fulfilling the spring Moedim, and that he was now reliant on God responding to what they would achieve together. So illuminate my eyes, negating the possibility that I become inactive, lethargic, and die. He did not want to repeat the situation that caused the estrangement in Gan Eden. Otherwise, the one who is in opposition to me will say, I have prevailed over him. That would be Hasatan and the religious founders like Akiba, and Paul, and Muhammad. My adversaries are pleased, rejoicing and exalting. In their circular reasoning, I am dislodged and removed, toppled from my rightful position. Circular reasoning is an interesting term. The basis of the word church? You won't find church anywhere in the Greek text of the Christian New Testament. It doesn't exist. Church doesn't exist. Christian doesn't exist. Gospel doesn't exist. The name Jesus doesn't exist, nor does Christ. But church is interesting here. Church is a replacement for ecclesia. When Paul and pals wrote ecclesia, which means in Greek to call out, some numbskull along the way said, "Oh well, we'll give that a title. I don't like the Greek text. What called out of what? We don't want them called out. We want to control them. Come on, call them into our building. We'll call it a house of God. We'll fleece them. We'll control them. We can't have called out. Called out sounds too much like that Jewish thing, that the mikra, to be invitations to be called out. We can't have that. So we can't have it translated called out. So let's come up with something else. Oh, I know. I got a great idea. Let's choose church. that'll be great. I can hear Satan laughing now. Church, there's only one entity that was named church, and she was the daughter of Helios in their Germanic religions, so pervasive across Europe. Her name was Church, and pronounced just like church. And so she was a pagan goddess. So they named their institution, their regime, their assembly after a pagan goddess. Well, I guess it fits because, the gospel of grace is named after the Gratia, who are the Greek charities. They're the cute little naked girls that are the party animals. So Christianity has some explaining to do in this regard. And yet, I myself have trusted. I was going to say that one other aspect of church, because of circular reason, I should at least close my thought here and complete it. It is from church and now church that we get circle, circuit, and circus. All come from that same word. So they are circular reasoning indeed. And yet I myself have trusted and relied upon your loyal love, enduring devotion, unfailing kindness, and genuine mercy. Yahowah is steadfast in this regard. He is trustworthy. He is reliable. He is loyal. He is loving. He is devoted. He is kind. And he plays favorites. Dowd recognized that. I don't know why others don't. My thoughts and inclinations rejoice in your freedom, deliverance, and salvation. Yes, God is offering us emancipation, deliverance from our guilt, so that we are free of it. We're acquitted. We're innocent. God only sees now the good in us, and rejoice indeed, because, we're going back to Gan Eden, the garden of great joy. So Dowd says, I will sing to Yahowah, because he rewards men and seeks recompense. A sheer here is a loaded term. He picked it up from Ethan Ha-Izraki, who was a bit famous for using the word when speaking of his ongoing interactions on behalf of Yahowah. And it is true that Yahowah rewards some and seeks recompense from others. That's why we began our previous program talking about those who will be rewarded and those from whom recompense will be sought. All right, since we have a few more minutes, I think, before it drizzles again. Sorry for the black cape around the books, but they really don't like water at all. We will continue a little further. And as I have shared in Volume 2 of Coming Home, it's called Messiah, we are often wise to take a moment to contemplate what other prophets have to say about the things that were written by Dowd in these Mizmowr. We've now made our way through the first 13, and of course, in other programs I've shared from many others. So as we think about what is revealed about the Mashiach and Malek Dowd, the Messiah and King, there is a distinguished list of prophets who have amazing things to say, affirming things to say. They, of course, begin with Moshe, who wrote of Dowd and the 18th chapter of Verbatim, Deuteronomy. His contemporary, a really fine man named Shamuel, listened to God. Nathan, the gift who Yahowah spoke through during his time where he wasn't speaking directly to Dowd. Ethan Ha-Ezraki, who is the person that God perpetually used at times like this when there was a problem that needed to be resolved and God needed someone to go in that he could rely on to get it done. His guy was Ethan Ha-Ezraki. He operated under different names at different times, but in this time, pursuant to Dowd, that's the name that he used. Also, he used Obed-Edom at that time. Other times he was called My Dowd, relevant with regard to Dowd. But he is first introduced to us as Chanok. Then there is Hosea. There is Yeshaya, Isaiah, my favorite prophet. Yirmiyah, I'm not trying to slight Yirmiyah. He says there's many, many spectacular revelations through the prophet Yirmiyah. And, oh my, the closing statements, in fact, the entire book of Zechariah is indeed brilliant. So these are some that we will consider. Oh, to that list too, you'd have to add Yoel. And how about the prophet Chabaoth? Embrace this. He provides an amazingly detailed and comprehensive condemnation of Paul, who is Dowd's principal adversary. He's the plague of death. He's the author, of course, of the Christian New Testament, but God calls him the plague of death. And while that's vital on its own merit, the intrigue is highlighted by the fact that Paul quotes from Chabaoth. He also quotes from Dowd, and he's the one that said that Dowd was dead and buried. Not so much, pal. The very prophecies which were written to condemn Paul, Paul cited, which makes those kind of fun. And this affirms a sad reality. Satan is convinced that no matter how obvious he conveys that the likes of Paul and Muhammad were working for him and therefore demon possessed, mankind is genuinely so ignorant and irrational, particularly once they become religious, they'll drink down the poison from the hands of the adversary. Further, there is also an interesting declaration in the Torah, as I've shared with you, found in Bamidbar, and that be Numbers, where it provides advice to God's people, encouraging them to come home to the covenant family in our time, which is during the last days. The prophetic declaration reveals that the descendants of Yisra'el and Yahudah, more commonly known as Jews today, must come to appreciate certain things regarding the inspired words and enduring promises of the Most High if they want to understand why Yahweh is both necessary for them and sufficient. Now, this yada realization leads to diath, a rational response, drawing our attention to the implications of an extraordinary individual's journey, really from this individual, exceptional individual, and we will chronicle his life and time. And he is one who would not arrive for a protracted period, according to God, but yet is somebody that he wants us to know. This descendant of Kowkab is called a Kowkab, a luminary. That would make him perhaps the greater luminary. And he is the rock set forth to show the way. Now, fortuitously, now based upon our multiple reviews and ongoing review of the 89th Mizmowr, we realize that he is speaking of Dowd, and also recognize this as we consider the first chapter of Bereshith, the first book in the Torah. Now, the prophecy foretells that as he comes forth to lead God's family, the scepter is reestablished in Yisra'el, and with it, Dowd will immediately lash out against his people's most daunting foes. Moab is specifically mentioned, which means, who is your father? And that's an interesting thing, just because it's used, bandied about by the socialist progressives and today, and by the religious in their boisterous rebellions. And along with them, Yahweh's protective shepherd will conquer Edom. Edom being particularly interesting because that's derived from Yaakob's twin brother. The legacy, and I think to some extent, Edom became the legacy of Imperial Rome and the Roman Catholic Church. It speaks of as we hear about Esau, he had particularly curly hair, and he was a reddish color. Most don't know it, but Caesar, that title, doesn't mean king. It means curly in Latin, which means that evidently Iusus Julius, as he is now known as Julius Caesar, was hairy, and that's how that title followed him. And Rome is best known for adorning their everything, really, in red. That was the color of Rome, boy. It's like Tiger Woods on Sunday, where it's Sunday red, and you dare not wear a red shirt or you'll be condemned of stealing Tiger's look. Well, Rome showed up in red, and if you showed up in red, then you were trying to impersonate Rome. And so I see traces, clues between Edom and Imperial Rome, which grew into the Roman Catholic Church, disposing and dispossessing Jews while incarcerating the satyr, as we're going to find here, the satyr in this story, which represents Satan, whom they clearly worshipped in the process. And as a result, Israel shall live. So this is an interesting excerpt. It's from Bamidbar, becoming one of my very favorite books. One of my it's not just a favorite book in the Torah, one of my favorite books, period. It just, every time you turn to something in Bamidbar, there is a powerful prophetic lesson. So this reads, "So now at this time, behold, I am going to approach my people. You and I have agreed to walk together. I have decided to provide counsel to you to show the way to the benefits of the relationship regarding what the people will engage in and act upon regarding your family in the last days." Well, that's really interesting. So God is speaking to Israel and therefore through them to us by way of Moshe. And he says, so now at this time, I want you to pay attention. Behold, I am going to approach my people. You and I have agreed to walk together. I have decided to provide counsel to you, to show you the way to the benefits of the relationship regarding what the people will engage in, what they're going to engage in and act upon, what they're going to do regarding your family in the last days. So the purpose of this is for us now. God, 3,450 years ago, gave prophetic insights in His Torah of what we would experience now so that we could share that with you so that you were apprised and forewarned. The prophetic declaration, the name of the one who listens to the enduring promises, the future proclamations, and the inspired words of God, and who knows and makes known, that would be yada, information leading to understanding. Dayath is also a reference to yada as the choder. He has the spirit of Dayath. Regarding Elion, now that's translated most of the time as most high, but that's really not accurate. The reason it's not accurate is El would be God, and it can be rendered mighty one or that sort of thing, but El is God. On as an ending would mean all things pertaining to. But it's got a yod in the middle, which speaks in ancient Hebrew of a hand reaching out to us, and the yod, which was originally a yod, hand, um, was used to speak of influence, of action, of things that you do, or the way that you could, influence things around you. The hand of God, for example. So Elion would be all things pertaining to the influence of God. You know somebody that bears the title Elion?
Dowd.
Dowd, absolutely. You're pretty safe if you give Dowd as the answer to most questions. But this one in particular, Dowd is the only person who is called Elion. There are some who covet the title. Satan, in particular, in the 14th chapter of Yeshayahu, Isaiah, covets the title Elion. It means that he wants to be Dowd. He wants to replace Dowd, which is what Jesus Christ actually represents. So here we have a yada, and we have a Diath and an Elion. Now that's pretty interesting because the choder is Diath. The choder is the tree of knowledge, and he is called the Etzah Diath, which means he is the tree of knowledge in Yeshayahu, Isaiah, and he is known to God as the one who knows yada. And his role is to reestablish the reputation of Elion, the one who represents the influence and hand of God, who prophetically beholds Chazah, the revelation, the Mas'azah of Shaddai. I love this word. Shaddai is just so Yahowah. It doesn't mean Almighty again. No. Shaddai means the one who is essential and sufficient, the one who is required, reliable, and capable. God wants you to know that He's sufficient. While descending from an elevated position, it was revealed to His eyes. Bamidbar 24:16. So He's talking about us. I see Him in the future, emphatically expressing His will, with ongoing implications throughout time, but not now at this time. My perceptions of his journey do not occur anytime soon. As a luminary, a brilliant celestial body of enormous heavenly power, he shall shoot out and come forth to show the way for Jacob, for Yisra'el. Yeah, he will indeed. He is the Towrah. That is a shoot. And his mission is to show Jacob the way back home. And in the first chapter of Bereshith, Genesis, he is depicted as the lesser luminary who reflects the brilliance of the greater luminary's light. The greater luminary would be Dowd, Elion again. So these are all terms that God is using, knowing that we'll pick up on them, that we will understand the implications of these words as they apply to God's ongoing story. And it says, and the tribe with the scepter and the shepherd's staff, the Shabbat, will rise and be established out of Yisra'el. Then he shall strike the borders of Moab, the politically correct, the multiculturalists, the Christians, who's your father really? While breaking all the descendants of Seth, the boisterous, rebellious, and defiant. 24:17. And so out of Jacob, of the tribes and the scepter and the shepherd's staff, all of which apply to Dowd, he is going to arise and be established in Yisrael. He's going to return to Mount Moriah on the 2nd of October, 2033, year 6000. Yeah, and it's what the one serving Yahowah in this role, Yada, is going to do that's going to make that return possible. So he's going to be established out of Yisrael, and then he will strike the borders of Moab and break the descendants of Seth, the boisterous, rebellious, and defiant. As God reestablishes this remnant of Yisrael to be there to usher their king home, God's going to rid the world of all traces of religion and politics, conspiracy, anti-Semitism, and militarism. So this is speaking of what's going to happen on Teruah, leading to Kippurim. And it shall come to pass that Edom, representing probably Rome, the imperial, the Roman Catholic Church, shall be defeated and conquered, and also Seir, the goat demon and idol. The Seir would be the Satar. In opposition to him will be incarcerated and held captive, and then Yisrael will engage and act victoriously and powerfully. All right, so a lot's going to go on. At the time that I would have translated this, I would not have known what I know now, that the Rahab, the combination of Satan and man, that is so devilish, that is now pursuing the Fourth Reich. He is a dictator akin to Adolf Hitler. He has embodied all of the Roman-esque things from ancient Rome. You know, you had the imperial Rome become the Roman Catholic Church, which was then usurped by Hitler to become the Third Reich, and now by Trump to become the Fourth Reich. And so this is what he represents. In fact, his coming out party in Jerusalem will take place on the Ides of March, which is the most celebrated day in ancient Rome. It not only celebrates the basis of their Easter, the things that they observed on behalf of Bacchus and Dionysus. They really liked Dionysus better than Bacchus, same god, but different name. And all of those events were celebrated on the Ides of March, but this is also the day that Julius Caesar was stabbed to death, and Rome went from the Roman Republic to Imperial Rome, with the emperors being perceived as gods. So there was really nothing that was more extraordinary for Satan and his creation of what would become Christianity through the Roman Catholic Church than these actions, nor his subjugation and oppression of Israel than what happened as a result of this. I mean, it was very shortly after this that we find um, uh, Israel occupied and pummeled by Rome. And so this is a message to Israel. These are who are going to be involved. And he calls this demon idol that is Rahab elsewhere a seer in this particular statement. And he's finally, at the end of this happens on Teruah in year 6000 Yah, the 24th of September 2033. Satan is incarcerated. He is held captive forevermore. And then Yisra'el will engage and become vigorous and powerful again, Bamidbar, by pondering the word, Numbers 24:18. So yes, even in the Torah, we find Yahweh calling his people home while predicting how Yada and Dowd will work together with Yahweh as the greater and lesser luminaries to quell Yisrael's foes and restore the nations of its vigor. His advice is to be there in the last days when all of this occurs. And we will examine so many more prophecies as we go forward. Our hope is that over these, particularly this next month, that we will detour a little bit away from presenting Twistianity as we are downstairs, and a little bit from presenting these Mizmowr, Dowd's thoughts, and our ongoing explanation of who Dowd is, restoring his rightful place, as well as Yahweh's name. And even the last word picture, although we have quite a ways to go in our development of all we can learn from it. Because what we're planning on doing is to examine. That was a hand that reached for my iced tea there, not knowing that that is my go-to when the throat gets a little bit parched. I do have a tendency to talk a lot. That we're going to do a number of shorter programs on the key elements of what we have learned. What is the covenant? How do you participate in it? What are the moedim? What do they represent? How do we know who fulfilled them and how we are to capitalize on them? How do they pertain to being part of God's family? How do we know the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name? What is it that we know about Dowd that is so different than what people have been led to believe? What is the future of Israel over these next 7 years? Who is Yada? And who is the Choder? Who is the Nakar, the observant foreigner that Yahweh has spoken of? And why should it matter to you? Why these books exist as Yada Yahweh, why we chose this unique translation style to convey God's intent and message to you. What does Torah actually mean in terms of guidance and teaching and not law? How does God work and communicate to people? And why did he choose that very unique approach of working and speaking through individuals of his choice over time, as opposed to directly? Why God hates religion and prefers the covenant relationship instead. the very nature of our planet and how it relates to the microcosm of Eden, and how these are really similar things, how God's going to return the planet back to the conditions of Eden, and what he is expecting from us. Why there won't be many that will participate in the upcoming Shabuah harvest, because God can't trust them, and why we have 1,000 years to help people earn God's trust so they can be enriched and empowered and be able to leave this planet and explore the universe with the one who created it. There are just so many themes that I want to be able to share. The nature of the Hebrew language, and how it is is replete with verbs that are not stuck in time, but that are all shaped and shaded so as to express relationships and free will, causation. It's just so many just fundamental core things that are important to know, and we're going to do our best to explain them. And so they'll just be turn on the camera. We'll do 15, 30 minutes on one subject and try to explain it the best we can, go on to the next, and then the next, and the next, and leave a interesting legacy of the fundamental footsteps that one would take to out of religion, out of politics, and into God's company. So that's part of what we're going to do going forward. And so hopefully Rich is able to capture some of Miss Leah with Kara sitting here to the bench, and Wookie here as the loyal dog at my feet, Asher not too far away, as the menacing clouds continue to blow by. It's getting chilly here, which means that rain is imminent. And so we'll say thank you for listening, and we will try to duck out of the wetness here and cover up the rest of our equipment. Thank you so much. Look forward to being with you tomorrow. Good day.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.